What's up, everybody? This is Chris with the New to the Game podcast and community. I am solo tonight. Ben is not here. But I just wanted to jump on and talk about something that happened the past couple of weeks, but also today. I have recently been growing as a company, and I've hired a couple of new apprentices for an entry level position and had them training with my with my longer term employees. I have two fairly experienced employees, one who's been with the company for 14 years, one who's been with the company for around a year, but picked up the game really quick and is an awesome, hardworking dude. Both of them have crazy good customer service, really good skills, and are awesome. The new apprentices, one of them has been struggling with the physical part of the job. They're a little bit nervous on the roof. They're a little bit kind of just not quite getting the hang of it right away, but they are hardworking and reliable, show up on time, and are working every day to better themselves. My other new apprentice, he super hard worker, really good, really solid, but had a major attitude problem. And one of the things that you hear a lot in the home service space is be slow to hire and fast to fire. And I had a really interesting experience this week where he had some struggles. Had a run-in and a verbal argument with one of my leads, which for those of you out there that are employees, if you've been at a company for a week and you get into a shouting match with a guy that's been there for 14 years because you think you know better, even if you do, you might want to think twice because that's not a good way to start employment with a new company. So on top of that, had some other issues. Called out, but had a pretty good reason for that. Had some personal stuff going on. Showed up late 2 or 3 times. Not a little bit, like a lot late. And just in general had a kind of a bad attitude, and it was really frustrating. But at the end of the day, I wanted to give him a chance because he's a really hard worker, and he's a friend of one of my longer term employees. So I gave him the benefit of the doubt. But on Friday, he had some issues on the job. We clean roofs in Washington State, and it rains here a lot. It's been dry since he got hired, but we had a really rainy, nasty day. And he got really nervous about putting up a ladder and getting up on a roof on a taller building. Not a steep roof, not something hard to walk on, but just nervous about getting up on the roof. And I made a comment to my lead. I was like, hey, man, if he's going to be nervous about this, I mean, what's he going to do for the rest of the year when it's raining for 9 months out of the year? I mean, how is he going to do this job for the rest of the year? And I asked my lead, I was like, is this roof small enough that you just want to let him clock out and sit in the van and we'll bang this out? And my lead didn't think he could get it done solo, so we rescheduled it. But this afternoon, he sent me a text and he quit. And he said that basically accused me of being only caring about production and not caring about safety, and spewed a whole bunch of BS about my other foreman who has been with me for 5 years since I bought the company, but been with the company for 14 years. Didn't understand the whole situation and basically accused the guy of wage theft and padding the time clock, but wasn't aware of the way that we run our time clock and how we operate, and basically told me something that I already knew as if it was going to be a shock to me and that my 14-year employee was stealing from me, which I find hilarious from a guy who's been with me for a week. And I had a moment where I really wanted to type out a long, detailed response and tell him basically how wrong he was. But I did something different for the first time ever that I just thought was worth sharing, which is I sent a really short reply. I said, hey man, I understand. I'll cut you a final check. Bring your employee binder, handbook, hat, and uniforms back to your lead, and I'll cut you a final check. Wish you the best of luck. And I left it alone. And I kind of had a moment where I could not believe how good that felt, because I really genuinely wanted to tell this guy how bad his attitude was and how off the freaking deep end he was thinking was. But the reality is at the end of the day, he's got his own personal stuff going on. He's got his own struggles, and he really didn't want to hear what I had to say. And that's hard, man, because I really care about people and I want people to succeed. But what I realized is that he was not in a place to hear that feedback and have it be beneficial. He just wanted to blame me, blame the leads, blame the senior guys, and he just wanted to pass the buck. and he decided that quitting was easier than getting his attitude in check. So I let him go. It's a whole lot cheaper for me to do that than it is for me to keep him, train him for 3 to 6 months, only to have him quit or cause problems later. At the end of the day, firing somebody after a couple of weeks is not what you want to do, or having them quit after a couple of weeks, but it is so much better than having that person stay. I love the old expression, treat people well enough and train them well enough that they can leave, but treat them well enough that they stay. There's an old story in business about a boss and a CFO, CEO sitting in a room together. And the CFO looks at the CEO and he says, if we train our people this well and they become so skilled, wouldn't they just leave for somewhere that pays more? Like, what if we train them and put all this time and money into them and they leave? And the CEO kind of just looks back at him and says, what if we don't train them and they suck, but they stay? Like, which one's worse? At the end of the day, you have to train people well enough that they can leave, but treat them well enough that they stay. And if you have a person that doesn't have a good attitude and isn't receptive to feedback, doesn't want to get their act together, and they would rather blame others, then you don't want that in your company anyways. And letting them go is less stress, less work, and more beneficial to you long term. And at the end of the day, sometimes that's what has to happen. So if you're at the point in your company where you're hiring employees and you're thinking about this, first of all, do background checks, do interviews, interview previous bosses. I took this guy on the word of one of my leads that he was a good dude, but if I had called this previous employer before I hired him, I would have found out that he had attitude problems at his old job. And I didn't know that until I talked to him. And I also might have realized that he wasn't in a good place and had a lot of personal stuff going on and really wasn't in a place to be a part of a team right now. And I wish him all the best. I don't want any harm or any bad will to him, but he's not a good fit for the company. And the total truth is that I probably would have fired him pretty soon if he hadn't quit. So at the end of the day, it is what it is. That's it for the day. I know this was kind of a slow-paced episode, but I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have questions about this and you want to talk more about it, jump into our school group, New to the Game. We're going to be posting lots of content. We're going to be going over stuff like this, problems like this, and talking about these situations and what you can do to avoid them and what to do if you end up in this situation. So, and yeah, I'll talk to you guys next time. Peace out.